I'm talking human rights. I'm talking right side of history.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting series of podcasts with myself, James Campion, author and music journalist, and I hope, after these podcasts, still good friend of Mr. Eric Hutchinson, our favorite songwriter, producer, and gadabout town. Eric.
Hello. We're back at it. You know, some people thought we'd never do it again, but here we are.
Who are those people?
Podcast. They're doubters, naysayers.
That's wrong.
Doubting Thomases.
So wrong. So we're here to talk about Sing Along with Eric Hutchinson, a brand new record of 6 songs that are all sing-alongs.
Yes.
So my first question has to be, I remember you mentioned this to me in December when we had lunch together. You said, I think I'm going to do this idea of just writing sing-alongs. What was your inspiration for this and the planning behind it? What was your first spark of, this is what I want to do with my next collection of songs?
Yeah. I've wanted to make a sing-along record for a while. I thought it would be a fun thing to do. I like the idea that everyone's in it together. I believe that everybody has a voice, can sing, and I've sort of liked that idea. So I've had that in my back pocket for a while. I thought, and then COVID, pandemic, so stupid, hated it. But I made a lot of music by myself for like 2 years. I was kind of locked up in my office. I was doing Zoom concerts. I was doing Instagram chats. But I wasn't making any music with other people. And as we were starting to come out of major lockdown, I was thinking, this sing-along thing sounds pretty good right about now. It's just something getting really back to basics of like just making music in a room with people. I didn't want to be recording something and then sending the tracks across the country to somebody else. I was missing, last couple albums I've done have been recorded mostly live, but this was even more live in the studio all together. No headphones, just a couple of mics, and it was kind of an old-fashioned idea. So I just thought, hey, it would be so much fun to be surrounded by a bunch of people all making music together.
Your original idea was to do it live with an audience because this is more you've done your last couple of records, you mentioned live in the studio, but that's still a studio construct. But your original idea was to do this in front of an audience and to teach the audience the sing-alongs?
Yeah, I think it would have probably been a disaster that way, if I'm honest. I do hope to one day still record this live with an audience once everyone knows the music. But yeah,
it was a great idea. I thought it was very original.
Yeah, it was just a little, and then we actually ended up recording right in the middle of the Omicron. So it became impossible to sort of try
I missed it. I was supposed to come down.
Yeah,
and then,
Omicron ruined everything. But against all odds, we got everyone together. We had 8 performers all in the studio together, and plus engineers and all stuff. We managed to do it. Nobody got sick, so felt very grateful for that. And some people, I think, hear the term, they don't necessarily know what that means, but to record live in the studio, a lot of times people will record something. First, they'll record the drums. Okay, here's the drum track. We're done with it. All right, now Go ahead, put a bass on there. Okay, next week we're going to do the guitar part. Oh, I got a person who can sing. She's going to come in next week. Or I'm going to send this track to her. She's going to record it at her home place. That's how a lot of stuff gets made. But I personally have been, really since Modern Happiness, this is the 4th record that I've done.
And the 4th series of podcasts, and every time we've talked about how you want to do it live now.
Yeah.
You have.
Well, I just like being a part of something that's immediate and kind of true. So this time we went all the way where we said we're only going to do a take of it. Everyone's playing all in the same room even. We're not even like in isolated booths where we can control much. So it's just going to be, this was how music got recorded 100 years ago. It was, you'd set up one microphone and people would gather around it, and when your part was coming up, you'd step closer to the microphone so you got a little louder, and then you'd be back here for the backing vocal.
Did you ever see the film American, what the heck's the film? Jay Leno's in it, and Fran Drescher. I forget what the name of it is, but it was American Hot Wax.
Never seen it.
Okay, so they do a great job of recreating the Del Vikings recording Come Go With Me, and that's exactly what you described. The mic's in the middle, sax guy runs up, runs back. It's fantastic. But, the producer's literally in the room going, you go. It's kind of the vibe. And I was very lucky before these podcasts, you sent me videos of the people in the room, and you really feel like you're in the room with everybody. So
Well,
when I
that's
listen
good.
to the audio, I could picture everybody singing and laughing and pointing at each other. It's cool.
Yeah, I mean, we had somebody come in, this guy Ramsey Millette, who I've known forever, and he filmed all, and so it also felt like a film shoot because he was also filming everything all in one take live and trying to get
No cuts.
No cuts.
He's moving it every.
It's
And in one case, he's like over on the piano, and then
yeah,
he
he's got to try to get over there, and so we were trying to do the best take that everyone was in together on, but I loved the idea that you can also watch these songs live, that you can see there's no tricks and that we're all just in a room making music.
And those are the takes.
Yeah, those are the takes.
And
So those are all up on YouTube. You can watch all of this. You can watch the whole album.
That's fantastic. And that's how I did it. The first time I listened to it, I watched it, and it got me into the spirit of it. And I also noticed, too, that, and I noticed it more when I listened to the audio tracks, there's a lot of gibberish and talking and laughing and, okay, why don't you start? And that, again, is very inclusive. I go back to that great Ani DeFranco quote about a record is supposed to be a record that is an analog, analogous of what you're recording, people in a room making music.
Right. Yeah, I really wanted to be a moment, a moment in time. That's what I think, to me, is exciting. And I've said it before probably, but that's how I think of my songs is my songs on a day-to-day basis are like your kids running around, snot-nosed, overalls falling off, hair's a mess. But then once a year you get them together, you put them in the portrait, you comb their hair, and you go, these are my kids. They're beautiful. They're put together. That's what my music's like to me. My songs are living, breathing things, but I try to, get a moment together and say, let's get them right, and this is how they'll be to other people. But I know day to day they're kind of sloppy and a mess.
Sure, yeah, and that's you could apply that to anything. I certainly can apply it to writing, especially in a book. I've often said that books reveal themselves to you, and I assume albums and specifically songs much eventually. Oh, that's the way this is supposed to go.
Yeah, and that's something I think I've gotten better at. And has been satisfying to me is I think my earlier records I was always dissatisfied with. I think as I got older, I've gotten better at hitting the bullseye of what it was I was trying to do, And some of my earlier records, I would finish them and I'd be like, okay, I made a hip hop record. And they were like, no, you made a singer-songwriter album. And I think the last few records I've been more and more able to say, okay, this is the vibe we're going for and these are what the songs are going to be. And, it's never exactly... It's always the best it's going to be in your head when you first start to make it. But I feel it's pretty satisfying to me that I feel like the records end up pretty close to where I wanted them.
And we should mention this is going to be, as we have done, I guess this is our fourth foray into this, but we're doing a series of podcasts. We're going to cover each song, but what we usually do is we talk about, Eric's inspirations, as we are doing now, and then the recording. So I'll get to some of the methods that you use to get musicians together to record specifically the last three albums, Modern Happiness, and you did Before and After Life first, but then you put it out afterwards that, and then of course Class of '98, and each one of them have specific musical themes as well. And I wrote some notes down here, so as is my wont, I will read them to you, and then you can respond. My first thoughts about this record is Eric Hutchinson, a diverse songwriter with a wealth of knowledge about the craft, its history, and influences on modern music, reaches back into the American songbook to compose a fun homage that also amazingly sounds fresh and relevant. So I want to talk about that a lot as we get into the songs, but it seems to me that your knowledge, your love, because we have many conversations about it, the history of music, the styles of music, and you have gone to those places, hints at them in different albums. But in this record, I can feel the thread. I could see the lineage. I could hear where it was that happened, and then you, down the centuries, echoing it. Did you feel that at all when you were working on these songs? Did you say to yourself, wow, I can kind of hear Woody Guthrie here, Pete Seeger here, Sam Cooke here? Did you think in terms of that?
There was a couple of musical inspirations. If you want me to get into that right now, I could.
Sure.
But a big one that sort of started was during lockdown, I got interested in the recordings of Alan Lomax.
Sure.
Who is an ethnomusicologist who he spent all this time and had a whole staff, and they went around the world really recording all types of folk music, from like Czechoslovakian children's songs to like African, peace and love songs, and then like songs in the South, American South.
Sure. Lomax is the hero of music. We would have none of this.
And then he ended up taking all those recordings, and now the Smithsonian owns them all. And so they're like this I was really fascinated by, there's no tricks. This is just recording them for the sake of recording them. We're not producing this record. We're just putting a mic here, and it's almost like
it's not lost to time.
Yeah, it's like a documentary of a music piece. And I really loved the charm and the simpleness, and also so much of that stuff was group singing. And a lot of the artists that he was doing were people like Big Bill Brunzi.
Sure.
And I don't know if Sister Rosetta Tharpe was some of his recordings, but she was a person I was listening to a lot. Elizabeth Cotton. These were really early folk singers, and I was struck by how much the folk singing hasn't changed in 100 years. Like you take your guitar, you sing a song about what's going on in the world, and that's kind of, that's still what I do to this day. And a lot of these artists were people that influenced like Bob Dylan and Pete Seeger, and kind of led to the second American folk revival. But I was really interested in, and then the other thing to me was, these people are singing about all the same stuff that I want to be singing about right now. In some ways we make so much progress, and in other ways we're still tied up in injustice and peace and war and love and
the anxieties of being human.
Yeah, right. And so I found all that really interesting, and I've sort of, that was what I set out to do. Is I was like, I want to try to make a folk record, and then also I was living through 2020 and 2021, and the Black Lives Matter movement was really coming to a peak, and I was feeling like I had a lot to say, and I was feeling changed as a person, and I felt like I needed to write and sing about it. Which
is why it still feels fresh and relevant, as I wrote, and I go on here in my notes. There's a musical awareness on this record. It's Eric's nod to say, yeah, I know where I come from, where we all come from, and these styles, this framework, is as powerful a message today, as you just said, as it would be any time. And of course, it's a sing-along record, as you had planned, a simple, fun collection of songs that have one purpose: to get people singing. And in the old,
and we do have the siren going in the background. It's not a podcast if we don't have the sirens in the background.
So this would have been much more dramatic while you were talking about, the strife and war. But I was going to say that the sing-along concept is original concept of folk music was to play it live and to get people to remember the message. I quote later on, we'll talk about which side are you on, even something like this land is your land. This land is our land. There are ways to do it. And this, when you listen to these songs, you're taken back to the original concept of live music. When I was working, and I went along with this, when I was working on my new book about Hey Jude, Take a Sad Song, that you are a part of. Thank you very much, sir.
Nice plug. I like it.
I got to get that plug in. But Professor Halpern from, I forget the university, but she's the psychologist professor that a psychiatry professor, I should say, that I interviewed, and she said music doesn't matter how many generations go by. Music was meant to be heard live, and you get it and you react to it. The fact that Edison created this thing that we can listen to it over and over again changed the way we absorb music. And we talked about this in the past. The record album, moving to like the Discman or the cassette player. How we absorb music affects the way people present that music. So you're going back before there was a time when people even thought about recording.
Right.
They wanted the live experience to be the thing that you remembered, and therein lies the sing-along.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that too, because I remember when I was first taking guitar lessons, I was probably 14 or 15, and my guitar teacher said, it's cool to play up in your room and everything, but really music's meant to be shared. And so he encouraged me to start going out and performing for the first time, and we started playing some open mics. It was cover songs and stuff like that, but he really pushed me. I always remember that the music's supposed to be shared, this idea that, yes, there's something about live music that is specific and that it's an exchange of energy in a certain way. But not to take anything away, the recorded music is its own art form in its own way. There's certain artists, I love their records. I probably would never go see them live because they're so good recorded. I like to try to do both, so I don't know where I land.
But in the sing-along concept, you do need that give and take.
Yes.
That and that these kind of songs, as we go through the songs, you could hear the lineage is the word I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And so the lineage goes back to a time when it wasn't as ubiquitous to find a recording, whether it was a 78 or something. And so people had to tour and go through these, you know, whether it's the Chitlin circuit down south or the folky circuit going through Washington Square and all the way down the East Coast or up to Massachusetts, they had to sing, okay, we're doing the sing-along now, so people were humming it 2 or 3 days later.
And it was, right, it was almost like the printed press, you know, that this was a way to exchange information and to move information along. And that was certainly one thing that I thought about a lot. I changed how I wrote the songs that compared to how I'd normally write a song for just myself. I spent a lot of time thinking about how many lyrics can I actually put into a song and expect people to know them. You know, any good sing-along song, by the end of it, you should kind of know the song. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about how many words would fit in here, how many words could people sing, how much of a melody is too much of a melody. So I was thinking very much democratically about, if I want everyone to sing this, how can I approach that?
Which makes perfect sense to me. As you know, I've always called you the Songsmith lovingly, because you approach a song with the idea of how to get, like you were saying before about the messy children, how to get that to the point of the nice family picture. So that's part and parcel of your craft, is to get a song and realize, this is my goal. Like Class of 98, your goal is to recreate not only the 90s, but the voice of a 17-year-old you, the way you were doing it in expressing your thoughts about being a father for the first time and losing, you know, parents. And then you go back to Modern Happiness, what you were going through there. So each one of these album cycles, you utilize what you've learned as a songwriter to create what it is, your end game. And your end game here was to make sing-along songs. So you couldn't be too wordy.
Yeah.
But yet a message has to be there, is what you're telling me.
To me, yeah. I mean, I was... Just going back a bit, we were talking earlier, you were extremely productive during lockdown, and a lot of people I talked to were. I was incredibly depressed, and we had a young daughter. My daughter was 1.5 years, and we were displaced from our home, and lockdown was scary for me and not fun and not inspiring at all, and it took a really long time before I was interested in writing, and it didn't feel like I had anything to say. But during all this time, I was sort of keeping journals and lyrics and things. And, you know, I was processing a lot, like all of us were, but I was processing a lot during the Black Lives Matter protests and during just a lot of the rhetoric that was going around. And so a lot of those thoughts and ideas that were there, when I went to go sit down quite a bit later, that was still the only thing I felt like I could write about, was I feel changed. And I feel like I see the world differently, and that these songs need to reflect that.
Not to get away from that, because I wanted to end up with that, because I know this is an important subtext, I guess, to these songs. And I didn't catch it as much. I mean, I did. You'll see in some of my notes. But I didn't catch it as much until you and I spoke before doing the podcast. And again, I promise I won't mention my project, the Hey Jude book. But again... When I was writing it, you said, I only evoke it because you said I was productive. When I dove into it, everybody kept talking about, what was going on in 2020. It was as bad as 68. 1968 kept coming out, and that's when that song came out. So you have the assassinations of Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy. You have, the unrest in the Columbia University and out in Berkeley. You have Vietnam, which I didn't bring up yet, but I was going there. And then, of course, Vietnam extrapolates out to Russia, invading Czechoslovakia, and then, the riots in Paris that completely shut the whole country down like a pandemic. De Gaulle had to leave the country. They just shut the country. They said, the country's closed now. Thank you. But I want to say is, it shows you what music can do for a polarized time. And in many ways, people were traumatized then, the way they were in 2020. And today, I feel like there's a much needed concept to the sing-along that you have tapped into. That is what you've done here. You've tapped into, like you said, it seems like now, with everybody coming out of the pandemic, these are the kind of songs they want to hear. They want to be part of the experience.
Well, I appreciate that. Hopefully people will feel that way somewhat, but yeah, there's something very unifying about everyone singing together, and also that thing of when you're in the middle of a group of singing, and you feel yourself surrounded by music, and you can't necessarily even hear your own voice that much, and it's really, there's something that's very unego about it, and it's like that's what I was trying to do with the songs. That's what I was trying to do with the arrangement and with the band that I eventually put together. Was I wanted it to not be about me so much, and maybe be, about a bigger picture, or what could I be a part of. So that's kind of where I was trying to go with it.
Well, it comes through in the music, certainly. And so I think we're going to move on to the next podcast, which is how you made the record, how you found these wonderfully talented people with wonderful voices that totally work. That is the end game to what you were going for, I think. And people are going to get it immediately, right off the bat with the first song. And we'll go through each song in these podcasts, and we will discover all the different connections, I think, that you were going for, and I think you come through with the record. But let's go on to the next podcast, which discusses how the record was made, and it was made very uniquely. So that's Eric. I'm James. Stay with us.
There's a prize if you get through all of the episodes. You get a gold star.
That's right.
Take me high